This is the tail light from our bus. Now it's I had to get inside it to clean it so that we had more light coming through to satisfy COF. I have already done that. I haven't filmed that, but I've done that. The process of getting this off involved getting past nuts that had rusted onto the bolts. And as I tried to undo them, I was able to get 2 of them undone on this side. Every other one was either missing or too rusted to come undone. And I ended up using a very, very small belt sander, believe it or not, that I was able to get in to the space in the back of the bus, and I ground off the ends of the bolts that were sticking out. In doing so, I was able to pull a number out, but a couple I actually ground off instead. It turns out pulling out is easier. But then, of course, that left me with how do I stick them back on the bus? So I've come up with a method that appears to be working. And that is, first off, ensure that there is actually a hole, so that means that the old bolt, if there was one, needs to be completely removed and binned. A new bolt of the appropriate size, a pair of pliers to hold it with, one of these very handy little blow torches, heat the head of the bolt up. Like any sort of heating thing, it's best to keep it moving and heat it reasonably equally. Does not need to get red hot or anything like that. It needs to be hot enough to hold its heat for a little while. We're actually going to use that heat to set this into the unit. Okay, so I can see it's changing colour. That's definitely hot enough. We'll come in, push it in and down into the plastic. Oh, and it's falling over. I might have gone a little too deep with this one. And into the plastic, and then hold it there until it will stay by itself in the position that we need. Okay, this has been the biggest hole that I've done like this so far, and this is a little bit more difficult than some of them. It's not quite staying. You can also push it down too far and not have anything underneath to hold it, which I may have done on this occasion. But the bolt is cooling down. I can smell the plastic melting. We actually want this to melt and have plastic join back on, sort of melt onto the bolt. And it is starting to set. This is not actually what's going to hold it. This is really just the first step to get the bolt in place and ready for the step that will actually give it its strength. Certainly, in my case, I've got slots that these bolts go into. They need to be quite precise this way, but they have a little bit more movement this way. Also, it does allow a little bit of out of square in my case. You'd have to look at what you're putting in, where it sits, but I try and get it reasonably square. And then when it's sitting well, very gently, put that aside, let that well and truly cool down. Okay, back to sort of room temperature cool, which might take some hours. So I've just, as I've moved it, it's moved, and already the plastic is cooled to the point where it's actually holding. But we need it dead cold before we start the next step.